I'm delighted that we've got three really knowledgeable guests who are about to share what they are learning in this time of COVID-19 about the capture, the sharing, and the monetization of artistic digital content. I'm absolutely delighted that we've been joined today by Neil Middleton, who is the Vice President of Marketing and Sales at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, Tricia Baldwin, currently the Director of the Isabel Bader Centre for the Performing Arts at Queen's University, and Lana Leprich, who is the Manager of Customer Experience at Tafelmusik Baroque Orchestra. Thanks to all three of our speakers for joining us today. So I think with no further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker of the afternoon. That's Neil Middleton, again, Vice President, Marketing and Sales at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. And Neil will share with us what they are doing and what they are learning with their VSO at Home digital series. So over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Catherine. My great pleasure. As we're, as just to start with, I think what I'm going to share is what we've been learning and what we've been discovering. We're all in the same place right now of trying to figure out the future, trying to pivot really quickly, trying to work with what we have available to us. And so part of what we've been able to do is based on what we had available to us right at the beginning of COVID. So let me take you back to the beginning. For the last few years, we've been working on building what we've called a digital concert hall, which was installing a set of cameras, sound equipment, and the ability to get to a place where we could easily live stream any concert we were interested in. We had not yet done that, but we were basically at the point where we had the tech in place to do live streaming right when COVID hit. It hit in the midst of our Beethoven Festival, where we were playing a lot of Beethoven 5, amongst other things. And the final weekend of the festival, we had the 50-person limit put in place in BC. We weren't able to welcome an audience. And in about 48 hours, we flipped to a live stream of Beethoven 5 and Beethoven 6 and had a huge response. I think we had about 30,000 unique viewers right off the bat, which was double any normal audience we could have. Our biggest outdoor audience is about 15,000, and I think that's sort of our normal ticket purchasing audience is about 15,000. So right off the bat, we saw this huge appetite for digital, as I'm sure many of you have. And a lot of people that weren't regular attendees, weren't regularly connected to us, came and watched and were excited to see us in that digital space as we jumped into the crisis. Coming out of that, more restrictions came into place. Our concert hall was shut down. We don't have access to it right now. We don't own the concert hall. And we have access to a small concert hall at our School of Music called Pyatt Hall. We did some iPhone recordings. Sure, everybody that's tried that knows just how much time and challenge there is putting those together. And it was a bit frustrating. So we quickly moved to doing a really small chamber ensembles, trios, duets, sonatas, quartets in our small concert hall in Pyatt Hall with one videographer, one sound person, really having 5 or 6 people, which is about the maximum that space can hold in a socially distanced environment. But it gave us the tools to create what we call our VSO at Home series. And we wanted to encourage people to purchase with the series. We knew they were ready to tune in. And we knew people were ready to buy tickets because they'd been telling us that, but we didn't quite have a great system. We're on Tessitura. Anybody that's on Tessitura knows it's not the simplest online purchase experience, especially when you're talking to new people who maybe aren't normal concert goers. And it didn't seem like the right system to sell tickets for digital concerts to us. And I think we're going to hear some other perspectives on that. So what we went with was we invited people to buy a virtual ticket, which was really a donation. So we did not put a hard paywall on our VSO at Home series, but in all of our communications, we pushed buying a $10, $20, or making a $10, $20, or $50 donation. And we had a really good response. We've done 6 VSO at Homes, and we've had about $2,000 plus in donations. So maybe 100 donations, not a ton, but an indicator that people are quite willing to pay to support the content. And we've had viewership range from hundreds to thousands. Our best VSO at home has about 8,000 views. Our last one, we were down to about 200 to 300 in the live viewership, but it hit about 1,000 48 hours after the fact. And right now we're at a place where we're pausing to consider our options and think about what we're going to do in the future. And I'll get to that in a second. At the same time, our education team got really active. We have what we call a VSO Connects program, which is a multi-part education program that includes curriculum elements, workshops, and ultimately inviting students to come to concerts. And we had a series of spring concerts that we pre-sold to schools as part of our full VSO Connects package that we weren't able to deliver. And we wanted to come up with something else to give them. So our education team created a whole series of digital projects, Meet the Maestro, Meet different instruments. We took our Beethoven 5 that we live streamed, repackaged that for education content, and created really an education portal, which we did put behind a paywall so that we could give the people that were already our VSO Connects partners free access to it to complete that contract, and then try and sell it to other people. Especially, and we thought that there was an opportunity for this as teachers were scrambling to figure out how to keep delivering their content in this virtual world. We didn't find a big market. There wasn't a lot of pickup, but we learned quite a bit from it, and we're going to keep working on that content in the fall, especially as we see in BC. What we've seen is many of the teachers who were specialist teachers, music specialist teachers, have been diverted to homerooms as class sizes have been dropped, and there just is this need for people to just deliver the core curriculum. And we all know the problematic situation of arts being treated as a second-class part of that curriculum. So we're looking at how do we create tools for non-specialists to make sure that they're able to bring some of the music into the curriculum in the fall, and that will be behind a paywall as well. So right now, having seen people willing to buy virtual tickets, really large viewership for some of our content that got way beyond our normal ticket sales segment, we're building a digital concert hall for this fall. Right now in BC, there's a 50-person mass gathering limit in place that we don't expect to lift until January. So we don't really expect to have an audience for a long time, and we're going to build a recording only model for this fall with our orchestra, and it will be housed in some type of a digital concert hall. We're building a digital concert hall using a white label approach, using a platform called Webflow, which is the newest iteration of really easy to use CMSs, content management systems. You need a web designer with some basic CSS and HTML understanding, and who understands how to skin a website. They can take Webflow and in a week brand it to look like anything. It's got some plugin tools. We'll use Vimeo Pro, Member Stack, that will create a membership system that creates a paywall to access all of our content. It's actually coming together really quickly, and we're quite excited about it. The more complicated part is going to be what the content is, and my colleague Misha Astor, who's in charge of our artistic planning, is working with our musicians and our maestro to really figure out how do we keep working this fall. But the idea is that we will have series of recording sessions rather than concert sessions. We're trying to figure out exactly what the optimum is. It might be a live stream type event, or it might be pre-recorded that we package to release as a live type event, of mid-sized to small orchestra to large chamber group content throughout the season, which is really the only option available to us right now. It'll have two thrusts. One is it's going to become content for our digital concert hall. And the second is that we'll have content that the orchestra is working on all the time. And should we get to a place where we can have an audience, we'll be able to turn something on really quickly. So that's the guts of our strategy for this fall. The concert hall, we've been thinking about in a few different ways. And I actually had a really interesting conversation this morning that I'll get to in a second that just completely changed how I'm thinking about it. Our real thought was we have these 4,000 households that are our normal subscriber base who don't have access to anything this winter, and let's build a digital concert hall, and that's going to be our core target. And so our thought had really been to replace a season subscription with a digital subscription to this concert hall. and they buy a subscription in the fall, and they'll have access to everything we do all year. However, this morning I had the chance to have a conversation with Robert Zimmerman, who was one of the key people in building the Berlin Philharmonic Digital Concert Hall some 12, 15 years ago. And we had a really amazing conversation about their whole strategy and their experience and who they discovered as their audience. And they found a very different segment for the digital concert hall, which one might expect, which was the older male who is technologically savvy. So 50 plus men who are ready to buy things online, who use Amazon, who maybe have a Netflix account and like classical music, became their core audience. Whereas we have something like 60% female is the ticket buyer. It's the 50 plus male is 80% of the Berlin Digital Concert Hall buyer. So that was an interesting insight that we're going to have to look for actually quite a different segment. And that actually they had also launched with the premise that they were going to sell to people who had attended the Berlin Philharmonic in the past, which, you can imagine there's a whole tourism, the Berlin Philharmonic has a reach quite different from most orchestras in the world. And they thought that that's who they were selling to. And that list didn't convert at all for them, actually. And it may have just been that it was early days, email marketing was still growing, social media wasn't in place yet the way it is now. But that audience was not interested in their digital offering. And what they found was this international audience of really CD collectors and aficionados who were comfortable with the technological offering was who was willing to buy to the digital concert hall. So that's shifting our thinking. That's shifting my thinking right now, and by extension, the VSO's thinking about just who we're going to reach. And I think we have this really exciting opportunity to get to people who driving to downtown Vancouver is just too much, but would maybe once a year come. People in the interior BC, northern BC, who know the Vancouver Symphony brand, and probably by extension Western Canada, and perhaps across Canada, and are classical music collectors, have a CD collection, are happy to watch content online. The other thing that he said that was really interesting was that 50% of their concert views happen in the live moment. So for anybody who's not familiar with the Berlin Digital Phil, they live stream every program of the Berlin Phil. So if they're doing 5 concerts in a week, they'll pick one of them and they'll live stream that concert. And then they take it down for a week, post-produce it, and then stick it back up in their archive. And that live stream gets 50%. So he said that the live event tune in now experience was a key part of driving sales and driving subscriptions and driving usership for people who had subscribed so that they saw the value. And that's going to be a piece that we're going to really build into our strategy this fall. So I've come out of that call feeling really actually quite excited. And I think there is a huge opportunity. There's a huge opportunity to engage both our normal audience and a new audience that's aware of us, but maybe isn't a live event person, maybe doesn't for whatever reason doesn't go to the live concert. I'm sure we all know some of those stats where 10% of the general public like classical music are classical music positive people, but less than 1% ever attend our events. So I think there's going to be an opportunity to grab a bite of that bigger 10% if we're able to do this right. And it's going to be an interesting and exciting fall. I think those are the key things I wanted to touch on right now. So I'll pass it back to Catherine.
All right. Well, that was exciting, and thrilled to be given my voice back, Neil, and thank you very much for that overview of what the Vancouver Symphony is doing. I've got a couple of questions for you. I'll generalize the first one and try to put it into some kind of context, and it's around pricing and how you sort through price points. Obviously, you had attached a suggested donation level for the VSO at home options. But you'd also indicated that you'd set a price for the VSO Connect package. What was that price, and how are you rethinking your pricing for the fall?
So the VSO Connect, we set 2 prices. We had the educational institutional price, which would give a school access for their whole student body, and they could share it out with parents and the whole shebang. And I'm just trying to remember exactly what that was, but I think it was around $125. And it came with a whole library. I think there was 20 plus videos in the library that were curriculum oriented, study guides, full package. But we also had a family rate, which was $25 that a parent could pay to get access to all of that content. We don't think price was the barrier as much as just fractured attention span and people scrambling to figure out what to do, and they just couldn't figure out how to take advantage of the content. We'll be focusing on explaining the value of the content and how to use the content much more clearly in the fall on the education. And families, I think they just got into digital overload, and there's so much content and you have so many subscriptions already that it was really hard to get traction on the idea of paying for some custom content. While we're seeing private lessons dramatically grow through our school and people are really happy to pay for that digital private lesson, the idea of buying some packaged educational content from us didn't take hold. May have been the packaging, may have been the marketing approach, but it didn't work very well yet.
Okay, I think we were all terribly impressed with the research that Nick Nanos had done for Business for the Arts and the National Arts Centre. Among that consortium, it indicated that 90% of arts and culture patrons would be prepared to pay something for their digital content. And I think that some of what you're talking about is questioning whether it's the price point or the ease of access, or just whether it's the right time to connect.
Let me just say, Catherine, in response to that, so I think our education content is quite different from our VSO content. And I think our subscriber base is very ready to buy concert experiences. And same thing's going to happen. There'll have to be the value. We'll have to explain to them how it works. And they're very ready to buy a subscription to a whole series of concert experiences rather than have to constantly re-enter credit cards and buy one-offs. Whereas the education and the family buyer and the school, they're in a very different place. And our brand is not necessarily the go-to brand for your education content, whereas we're go-to brand for concert content. So
great. Okay. Next question. Does the rights management aspect of your recordings change at all with your plans for the fall?
Yeah, we're going to have to really get into it. We've been surfing the line a little bit. Beethoven was no problem, and we are actually a signatory to the, I also forget the name, but the electronic media agreement that Catherine and OC helped shepherd together. We have pre-purchased a chunk of recording time with our orchestra. It's something like we have 200 minutes ready to go. And so we're in a big conversation about what that's going to look like for the fall, how that's going to change and how that might expand. Or I don't quite know where that'll be, and it's not my department. But we're going to have to change that a bit to get our orchestra rights expanded to cover this whole thing. And then on the music side, we're just really diving into that right now on the publishing rights. Again, not my wheelhouse, not my area of expertise, but we're going to do our homework. We've been playing a little fast and loose with it over the summer with what we've been putting out for free on YouTube. But when we get into this owned space, we're going to have to really do our homework.
You had talked about demographics of patrons for online content, and we've had a question about whether or not the new viewers have been from the same demographic as your existing physical ticket buyers, or has there been interest from other groups?
Yeah, there has been. I still need to get my full. I haven't done a full analysis of the demographics, but we know that we have doubled our reach. We have twice as many people as would normally be viewing the BSO, and our web traffic, interestingly, in this time, has shrunk a little bit from our normal audience, which would be going once a month, checking what's coming up, finding out more details about their concerts. That traffic has tapered off, and we have new traffic coming from around the world. We've basically doubled our international traffic coming to look at what our live streams are, find out this content, and find what content we're putting out that they can now access, whereas they had zero interest coming before because there was no content for them to access. So that's a trend that we're going to keep pushing and keep trying to grow.
Great. So another question that I'm going to frame in two different ways. Is the VSO intending to do any live performances in a concert hall in the coming season? And, question A is with an audience or full stage empty hall?
Maybe. We don't have a clear answer. So really the strategy we're trying to create is at a base, we will have a socially distanced orchestra. Our hall's not open yet. They're planning to open in the fall, but until they're actually open, we aren't 100% sure where we will have to do this. We have a plan that says we can put about 30 people on stage safely if we get back into our normal concert hall, the Orpheum. So we'll probably start with a 30-person limit and record music that has 30 people or less with no audience in the hall. And as soon as some of those restrictions change, which is very, everybody's in the same boat, very hard to predict when the 50-person mass gathering limit will change, we'll be ready to scale up. So that's probably not a satisfactory answer, but I think the safest thing for us to do is figure out how to operate when we're not able to do any really live experience, and then we can quickly take advantage of any live opportunities that come up.
Right. Now, next question. I'm recalling that fabulous live stream from the Orpheum on the 15th of March, put together in very short order, but really brilliant. And I know that I was joined by a lot of other people from around the globe for both the live performance and then for opportunities to watch it later. And I'm recalling that they were streamed free without a suggested donation. Is that correct? Am I recalling properly?
Yes, we had some donation asks around that one, but we really hadn't. We were just moving so fast. We did that in 48 hours. So it was a test, and it worked. We know that there's an audience, and now I think the challenge for all of us is to monetize that audience and make sure that we're putting an interesting and high enough quality product forward that they are all excited to pay for it.
Okay, I think we'll move on now to our next speaker. Neil, I'm really grateful to you for sharing your experiences and giving a sense of just how it is that the VSO is approaching what you're learning from what you've done and how you will continue to evolve what you're offering as time moves on. So thank you very much for that. A great report, and I know that more questions will come in after I pass the baton to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Tricia Baldwin. As I mentioned earlier, Tricia is the director of the Isabel Bader Centre for the Performing Arts at Queen's University. It is one of the most glorious concert halls I've been to in recent history, beautifully set on the shores of Lake Ontario, and also benefiting from an extraordinarily diverse and high quality program. The Isabel Bader Centre is also the home of a number of arts groups in Kingston who love to perform there because of its glorious acoustics, wonderful amenities, and amazing staff. And Tricia, you've got a lot to tell us about your evolution towards online content, carrying forward from the work that you began at Tafelmusik all those years ago, way ahead of the curve as always. So I think I'll now turn the talking stick over to Tricia to tell us about what she and the Isabel are learning together about content capture, content sharing, and monetization of content. And we'll see that Tricia is actually rather fabulously placed within the Isabel at this time, I believe.
With a very still orchestra behind me. So welcome everybody. I'm just going to be sharing my screen. So we've had a great adventure with online performances, and I wanted to review our basic concepts of just going for the artistic excellence through high fidelity sound. And we've all been on Facebook with the at-home videos, and we thought, no, we want high fidelity sound. And that was kind of, we put a lot of experimentation, a lot of time into that artists are paid. And the excitement of live performance, not posting a film, but having a live performance. I'll talk about the multifaceted monetization model and audience interaction throughout the performance and after, multi-site access to performances, and all the technical prep and making sure that there's technical redundancy for when things go wrong. And I think a big part of what we've done so far that's been successful is the larger market collaboration with other presenters and broadcasters. So we created our Isabel Digital Concert Hall, and we've done a number of things. It's the home for our live streaming direct from our concert hall, live streaming from remote locations, and video library. And back in 2009-10 when I talked to Robert at the Berlin Philharmonic Concert Hall. He, at the time, and I've since learned that the stats have changed, people would spend 2.5 minutes on a live performance and then go to the video library. So when I was at Tafelmusik, we created a lot of films with the Galileo project and House of Dreams to really populate the number of films that we had to build our film inventory. So at the Isabel, we're really building our video library at the same time. And we've done an online festival as well as streaming and webcast collaborations. And so part of the collaborations that we've done is with our Canadian cello competition. We worked with CBC to have it webcast on the semifinals and finals. And that has a lot of different challenges when you've got 7 cities and 3 countries and things beyond your control, but it was also very exciting. And we could have just posted a film of the players playing, but there was something much more visceral in having that whole live performance happening. And then we created, because we wanted to create work for artists and arts workers, we talked to a major donor and created the Ballytoban Live from the Isabel. And we just started collaborating with a lot of people. And why the collaboration is really important is if you're in a 4 million city with an extra 3 million in the region, or a 2 million city with an extra 1 million people in the region, you do have a natural market. When you've got 135,000 person city and farmland surrounding your city, that makes market growth and market access hard. So the collaboration is especially important. And so we ended up collaborating with a lot of people on that. And here's the Wheel of Fortune. And so we haven't got completely through this wheel yet, but we've worked on the collaborations, as mentioned, including the Chamber Music Society of Detroit, Rhode Island Chamber Music Concerts, War Memorial, and Chamberfest, and CBC, and within Kingston, the Skeleton Arts Park Festival and the Dan School of Drum and Music and Kingston Symphony. And so the collaborations for us to build market access is extremely important. And we worked on major gifts, and in talking to the donor, I talked about the need that artists need to be paid, and that we need that help because of all the work that's disappeared for artists. And she ended up not only supporting the festival, but the building of our digital concert hall. And then we also asked for donations online. Going down the road, we're looking at advertising and possible the YouTube partner program, selling other products, because this will go beyond COVID in terms of future concert tickets and merchandise. And then the earned revenue model, and we're looking at a paid subscription model for the fall, and also pay what you can, in addition to some free programming. But it's a very big balance, especially when you're in a smaller center, to actually think of the monetization through multiple sources of revenue to do what you need to do. And I guess the most attention we spent was on production values, and we just take our online performances as seriously as our live performances. And we've got a fantastic team that have worked in the recording business before and are completely committed to high fidelity sound. So we did a lot of experimentations, and the excellence in audio is extremely important. And I just really want to stress the excellent source sound. So you can have bad sound and add reverberation, but it's still bad sound with reverberation. And getting the excellent source sound microphones is really important. And we used warm microphones, WARM, that actually are warm, and they're a ribbon microphone. And we spent a lot of time making sure that we were actually capturing the beauty of the sound from the source, because post-production is very difficult to have that. And what happens when you have that excellent source sound is you've got the soul of the sound. It's just like a concert hall, you know, in some new concert halls, they don't have the bottom end of the sound, so it's crisp and clean and it has no soul, but you actually want that bottom end of that sound to reverberate in your own soul. And so we really spent a lot of time on that, and using streaming software that doesn't overly compress sound, like Zoom and Vimeo landing page. And we found that Vimeo for as a distribution has some challenges when there's a weakness of signal, especially with remote broadcasting. Sometimes it can try to shut down. So we've switched in terms of the distribution of the signal to YouTube. And it's important, and Neil has talked about this, to create for the medium for the audience. And I learned this from the Berlin Philharmonic Concert Hall, that we need to change. Apparently we have a very short attention span for images. So you need to actually alter the images and change the images as you would in live in a concert hall. So we now have 4 remote cameras that can be changed, and we pre-program the zooms so that we can get the zooms in to the soloist. And rather than the proverbial camera at the back of the hall, that you're constantly altering it without being overly caffeinated in doing so. And one of the things, if you go, we're really proud of our Griffin Trio streaming and film, and beautiful sound, but it looked beautiful lit in live, but you have to make sure that you have to light your stage about 30% higher than you would need to in real life, because everything darkens, and especially with Facebook. Facebook actually really darkens the images. Just like we rehearse, it's testing everything. It's testing destination sites, the linkages. We open the concert hall a half an hour before and make sure that everybody, because when we're working with partners, that everybody has signals. We do that all beforehand, and we test a lot. And when we are working with artists, we make sure that we have people looking at their computers as an audience would, to see how does it actually look on the computer and not on a high-tech screen and on a tablet. So doing a lot of tests is really important. And when we asked the Chamber Music Society of Detroit, it was kind of fun. We said, okay, what did you learn? And they said, we'll tell you everything that went wrong. We had our computer crash. And so now we actually have 2 computers going. So if one crashes, the other can take over. Same with the destination sites, that we make sure that we have multiple destination sites. So on our concert hall, if one goes down, that we can actually replace it with another. And I think in terms of trying to really maximize the market, we get people to our Isabel Digital Concert Hall, but it's about half to that and half to Facebook, and also YouTube and Vimeo. But we have really tried to have multiple platforms to bring a lot of new people in. And you also get a lot of post shares on social media, and so we're going to talk about monetization, but in terms of the reach, there's actually a life after the live performance happens. And I really stress that to do live rather than posting videos. That's just an opinion. And in terms of audience participation, just like in a concert hall, you hear something beautiful, you want to tell another audience member, oh, I love that Brahms, it's amazing. And so we have staff members posted on our digital concert hall and Facebook and on YouTube. So anytime anybody's putting a question in, we're recording the question and we give it to the artist after. We're constantly commenting, welcoming people to the site, and so that it feels like a live performance, and trying to mimic that sense of excitement when you hear something beautiful, you actually want to talk about it. And I know even in the concert hall, when people come out in the lobby and it's a great concert, the whole pitch of the lobby goes up, and that's what we try to do. And I remember with the first one with the Griffin Trio, I was typing at the speed of light. There were so many comments coming in saying, this is kind of like an oasis in the middle of a desert. It's so great to hear live performances again. And then we feed the questions on a monitor to the audience, so they can say, well, thank you, Catherine from Peterborough, and thank you, Neil from Vancouver. And they talk right to that person and answer their questions. So that immediacy is really important. And just going forward in terms of that wheel that I just showed you, we're looking at an easy performance payment for online concerts, and we've already got the design for that. We just need to go ahead and do that, and making sure that it's PCI compliant and has the ease of use, especially for baby boomers and seniors who are not as comfortable with technology. We're increasing the number of collaborations to increase the audience reach and also to contribute to the artist's fees. So if we all contribute to the artist's fees, the artist actually will have a really decent fee. So we're looking at the artist in addition to reach. And then we're saying, what else can we do during this COVID period? We're looking at a new creation program, and I'm having some of the workshops on our digital concert hall as well. I think our tech team is up for saying to it. They were just so fabulous, and it takes a lot of courage. You know, you're under a microscope here, you know, nationally, internationally, everybody's watching the competition, and it actually takes courage to go ahead, but they had that and that willingness to learn. And I'm just really appreciative of that, the ethos that our tech team put into this great big leap in what we were doing. And I just wish you all great things for your online adventures, and thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tricia, for that incredibly helpful overview of what you've been doing. I've got a few specific questions for you from the audience. And first one is a tech question, excellent for a boomer/X such as yourself. When you encountered problems with Vimeo's service, did you have a paid Vimeo account, or were you going with a free one?
No, oh no, we have a Video Pro account. And what's interesting about Vimeo is that it's actually a great, it's an excellent production studio. And so it has a lot of benefits from a production perspective. It's just from a distribution perspective, when a signal gets weak, and this is more in the case of remote streaming, when you're dependent on somebody else's signal, it does something that's called jittering. And it's not as robust as YouTube. YouTube will go, oh, the signal's weak, it's okay, and it continues on. Sometimes Vimeo will shut down. And so we found that YouTube was a little more robust for when signals have some interruptions.
Thank you for that. You may have answered the question with your final photograph of your tech crew, but I'll ask the question anyway, just to make sure that we've counted properly. How many people are involved in the tech side of the live stream event? Audio, video, etc.
It's 4. We have somebody on streaming, somebody on camera, somebody on sound, and somebody on lights.
And somebody responding to Catherine in Peterborough.
Oh, 5, yeah, behind from Catherine from Peterborough and Neil from Vancouver. Myself and another staff member.
What does PCI compliant mean?
It's I think it's Ontario-based, but it's it may be national. In term, PCI compliance are the credit card rules in terms of data protection of financial information from your customers, and it's really rigorous. And so, you know, we were always hearing on the news that this system got broken in, that system got broken in. At Queen's University, we have the PCI police on us, making sure that everything is completely compliant. And so that's what we have to do in order to make sure that nobody else has our our customers' payment data, and it goes directly to the bank.
Right, and so customers can share their credit card information with confidence that you won't get hacked. And we've had a couple of deep expressions of love for the cello competition, along with appreciation for the opportunity as an audience member to send love to performers, comment on a solo that you know is coming up, using social media tools for sharing. So thank you, Tricia. Stand by. We've got another question that I'll put to the entire group. Our next speaker is Lana Leprich, and she is Digital Marketing Manager at Tafelmusik Baroque Orchestra. They have just finished doing a series of Tafelmusik at Home ticketed performances online, and I'd like to invite Lana to tell us what they did, how it went, what they learned, and what they've got planned next.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I'll get right in. I know we're short on time. I'm going to be sharing one very specific project that we did on monetization and talk through kind of my approach chronologically from beginning to end and all the nitty-gritty steps we took, and I hope it's helpful. So like my co-speakers, we at Tafelmusik started doing digital content pretty immediately after the pandemic had hit. Admittedly, it was pretty fast and loose and pretty DIY in the beginning. So as we headed into April, we started having conversations about how we might approach content that's a little more intentional, a little more robust. And one of the projects that came out of these conversations was our Tafelmusik at Home series. So this was our first entry into monetizing online content. It was a weekly series that just concluded on June 24th. And each concert was about an hour in length. It featured 3 musicians performing back-to-back in their homes. And it concluded with a live question and answer period, which was facilitated by one of the musicians who performed that night. In terms of how we did it, so there are an infinite number of ways we could have configured this, and my head was swirling in the beginning thinking about, you know, platforms and approaches and logic paths. So before going down that rabbit hole, I kind of outlined 3 key considerations that would inform our engineering of the thing. And in order of importance, first and foremost, patron ease of access. I feel like others have touched on this today, but our patrons slant older and they are not always the most tech savvy bunch of people. So I was thinking about how to make this as painless as possible. Ideally, it would be a one-click solution in one place. We didn't want to send them to Vimeo to watch and then to, you know, Zoom to participate in a Q&A. And ideally, we didn't want them to have to create any kind of account. I was also thinking about accessibility. So what platforms work best on most devices, old devices, all browsers, because some don't. The second thought was restricting performance to ticket buyers only. So we did want this to be like a proper concert experience where someone buys a ticket and is admitted. So that took certain platforms like Facebook off the table immediately. And then just lastly, thinking about our own internal tech. So what streaming software could our devices support? What streaming software could our budgets support in this time, and how do they all talk together? So for our setup for this series, we chose a pay what you can model of $5, $10, and $20. It was landed on kind of arbitrarily from conversations we had as staff about what we would be comfortable paying, what we thought the concert was worth. And we did include messaging in the purchase path to say gently, you know, consider who's watching at home with you. Like if you're buying a ticket, but your, you know, daughters or sons or husbands or wives are watching, maybe factor that into the price that you choose. And I will just say quickly, this for us was absolutely not a revenue generating project. We did not expect to make bank with this. We didn't set out to do that. It was really 2 things. One, an experiment to see if people would pay what they would pay. We really had no sense of how to gauge that. So it was kind of taking the temperature of the room in order to inform our future programming. And it was also kind of a gift to our patrons. So our audience, we knew our core audience was very thirsty for a concert experience. So we wanted to approximate something of that. You buy a ticket and you sit down at this time and dedicate this time to watch. So just a disclosure that there were no hard sales goals. Like Neil, we're on Tessitura, so I built it like a regular concert. And for all of the ease of access reasons I mentioned earlier, we landed on YouTube Live. Also, as Tricia had noted, Vimeo is a bit funky sometimes. So what we did was set up unlisted, we scheduled ahead of time unlisted YouTube Live streams, and we took the URLs from each of those streams and put them into Tessitura. So that's what the customer would receive when they purchased a ticket. And also on the night of the concert, they received a reminder and they could click and then they're right there into YouTube. Full disclosure, big disclaimer, this method is not truly locked down. So somebody needs that unlisted URL to be able to access the concert. They can't stumble upon it in looking on YouTube. They have to have the exact URL, but there's nothing to stop me from saying purchasing a ticket and then sending that to 10 friends, or, you know, sending it to 100 friends. So just a note that your mileage may vary with this approach. Again, I did this because I wanted to prioritize access over our second point of restricting to ticket buyers, but just something to keep in mind. Yeah, so to talk about tech support, we had a team of 2 people that I absorbed from our box office that did tech support on the night of. I anticipated any kind of problem that I thought a patron might experience, and I typed up a big troubleshooting document, which our tech support team used as a script on the night of the performances. I will say we had an average of about 270 people watching per event, and only about 2 to 5 emails or calls a night. So tech support was not a huge component. People were able to access fairly easily. And we did include a survey after each concert asking questions of our ticket buyers just to see if there's anything we could improve in the weeks going forward. The tech setup, so we decided to pre-record the musicians' concerts and stitch it into one beautiful video that we would play the night of. And we did that for 2 reasons. One, coming back to Tricia's point about fidelity and audio control, this gave us the ability to mix and master the file and adjust the lighting and make sure that the volume was consistent across each performer, but also the prospect of literally live streaming from 3 people's homes introduces 3 times the trouble, and it made me a little nervous because, you know, some of our people do not have high bandwidth internet connections. So it had the artifice of looking live. It was not truly live. So on the night of the concerts, we also used OBS, which Tricia mentioned. It's free. We chose it because it is free and because it's quite compatible with YouTube and it's quite robust. So we broadcast the video through OBS to the YouTube stream. We had title cards ready, which we found handy. So, you know, the concert's about to begin, or, you know, please be patient, we're having technical difficulties, which fortunately we only had to use once. And then in terms of the Q&A, the participant would call into our device through Skype, and their face would be broadcast through OBS back out to the YouTube chat, which worked quite well. We did have a point person, which was typically myself, monitoring the stream health and moderating the questions. So I would encourage question asking in the chat, and then I took the questions as Catherine's doing and fed them directly to the interview participants so that they didn't have to bother going through the YouTube chat themselves. What did we learn? So I'll kind of skim over this because I know time is tight. Our revenue was okay as an experiment. Obviously, this doesn't come close to touching even a fraction of what we might make typically in a 5-concert series. I'll highlight the average spend. I was quite delighted to see the average spend at $13. That suggests to me that people were quite willing to pay, of our 5, 10, and 20, were quite willing to pay the $20, which was nice. 65% of the people were known to us, regular subscribers or donors, and 35% were fairly new individuals, either folks who have bought single tickets or were brand new to the organization. 65% reporting an enjoyable tech experience. I think, based on the nitty-gritty answers that we received, I don't think 35% had a terrible experience. I think 65 enjoyed, and some people just didn't enjoy being on a computer watching a concert, which even as a digital native, I appreciate that. It's more enjoyable to be in a concert hall. I was happy to see 98% would come again and 96% would recommend. So in terms of learnings and future considerations, a big one that came up for us was access date. So we really wanted people to watch at 7 p.m. Eastern for a few reasons. We wanted to reach critical mass in terms of engagement and question asking. And for union reasons and other reasons, we wanted to discourage leaving it up for longer periods of time. But we did have a lot of people write in to say, this time doesn't work for me because X, or I'm in a different time zone. So that's something we're thinking about going forward. How do we fully restrict access to buyers? Again, with my YouTube method, it's not locked down. And I don't think it has to be Fort Knox, but I am thinking about ways we might use Tessitura to generate unique URLs or something that's a little more secure. I'm thinking about optimizing across devices. So we tested extensively on laptops and on mobile, but one of the nights I was watching, I hooked it up to my smart TV and realized it didn't look bad, but it looked different. It was a little washed out. The sound is a little different. So that's something we'll be looking at going forward, looking at any possible device that people might be watching on. And in terms of how it's going to affect our revenue learnings and programming going forward, these are ongoing conversations. I don't have much to share at this moment, but definitely thinking a lot about what our next season will look like and how this will inform our choices. So that's it for me. I'll turn it back to you, Catherine.
Awesome. So we've had some really great questions that have come in through the chat for Lana, and for some reason my computer has decided to hide, but I will start with one that I remember. Lana, what percentage of your audience members actually completed the survey? Did you have a good response rate?
It was okay. It was about, I think the average was about 75 respondents per over 200 attendees. So a little less than half. Not great, not terrible, but not bad for a survey response.
One of the other questions that came in was, with YouTube, were you able to get data during and after to understand your user numbers?
I didn't touch the data during. I was scared that we might, knock off the stream or something. I was able to just see the viewership numbers as the stream was live, but I waited to look at the deeper analytics until after it had been published. So once the live stream ends, it turns into a regular unlisted video. And at that point, I would go in and look at more data on where people were watching, how they were watching, and where they were joining us from.
And one other question in here, which some people have responded to in the chat, but I'll ask you as well. Is there any evidence that the soft paywall solution was being abused? So it got a lot more views than you had ticket sales, or was that something that was pretty under control?
Yeah, for us, it was, when we looked at viewership numbers and ticket buying numbers, it was essentially one-to-one. So we didn't have an issue personally. But again, just warning, if you do use this, that's something that you may encounter.
Oh, and one question that's just popped up now as well. Would be curious to know what marketing efforts you used that might account for the 35% new patrons that you reached through this initiative.
Yeah, so we stuck to unpaid campaigns. We didn't want to put a lot of money into this initiative because we didn't know in terms of revenue generation what we would get out of it. But standard Facebook ads, small boosts. We tried to email lapsed buyers, so perhaps someone who had purchased single tickets but not for some time. And I do think a lot of it was word of mouth. It did get picked up by a few groups who shared, whether that's fellow organizations or media. I think CBC may have touched upon it. We didn't get mass media coverage for this. We also did partner with a gelato company, which was fun. So a local gelato company, you could, with your ticket, add on a pint of this gelato and enjoy that. So I think we did enjoy some additional traffic from their followers as well.
So I think that's all that's come in through the chat. I think I'll pass it back over to Catherine to, if you're there still.
I am still here, and there's one question actually that I wanted to put that came in earlier that I wanted to put to all of our guests. And that was the question between using YouTube or Vimeo versus having your own branded concert hall. When are you at the point when you might do one versus the other? What are the considerations for making that determination?
For the Isabel, we're actually using both at this point. But we have basically have our digital concert hall plus Facebook. We do have YouTube as well, but it seems Facebook attracts a lot of people that are familiar with it. So we are still working on a multi platform at this point.
Neil, how about you?
I think it gets to what your goal is, and if you're looking for mass, just if your goal is just bulk viewership and as much viewership as you can be everywhere with no paywall. I think though that if you're in a place where you can put together concerts, you're in a place where you can envision 10, 12 concerts this season, you're in a place where you can create a paywall. And what Lana's talking about and Tricia's talking about accessing new people, I think the opportunity is to create something that we can sell to our normal audience who is ready to buy and support us. Our subscribers love the idea of the symphony and the idea that symphonies are in peril, that artists are in peril this year. They're ready to step forward. So for me, part of building a paywalled concert hall is to give them something to purchase to support our musicians. And then the second part is it will drive, it'll be a sponsorship tool, because we're going to be able to go to our sponsors that normally sponsor a live series and give them something to sponsor. And they're all very open and really curious to see what we're cooking up. They're challenging us to come forward with something that's robust enough for them to really see the value in sponsoring. And then the public sector, I think this is going to create structure, and it's going to be a really strong story for us to explain to people. And so we're gonna sacrifice gross viewership numbers dramatically. You know, we might get 10% or less of what we would get if we were just putting out free stuff. But on the flip side, I think we're going to get people are going to feel invested in the concert hall, and they are going to sit down and tune in. This is the theory, we'll test this, but I think that by paying, you've committed to doing something and you want to get the value out of it. And we're going to get a lot deeper viewership, because we hit about 30,000 people watching the Beethoven 5. We hit 150,000 people with it. And, you know, most of them were in the 3-second to less than a minute viewing. And the 30,000 got to multiple minutes of viewing, but still only a subsection of that sat down and watched the whole thing. And I think those are the key reasons we're pushing forward with the paywall system. And then whatever revenue we come out of it is going to be nice, but it's going to be tiny compared to the fundraising and public sector support that we need to drive and maintain. And so really, it's going to be a tool to inspire that. And if we knock it out of the park and get some really good revenue off of it, great. That'll be a silver lining, but really it's a tool to achieve the fundraising and public sector support.
Lana, just reflections on branded digital concert hall versus use of the available tools.
So we will be exploring, Tessitura is launching some kind of digital hub. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. It's being slowly rolled out, so that's something that we're thinking about. I'm interested. I have some friends who work for a media arts festival here in Toronto, and they built a beautiful branded concert hall on their website, fantastically programmed, Vimeo plugged into it, and it looked beautiful, but they found after going live that it actually wasn't compatible with a lot of systems. So a lot of patrons had trouble. So I am interested. I think right now I don't have the resources to test and build something of that stature. I think we will probably stick to the tools that we have, but brand within and brand around. So brand, keep our logo in the video, keep our branding assets in videos that we're doing, and ensure that anything that happens around that content and experience is on brand with Tafelmusik.
I think at this point we're a little over time, but that's a characteristic of any form of Catherine Carlton relaunch learning series, is that we're at least 5 minutes out. It has been truly amazing, not only to witness the high level of participation from colleagues across the country, but also to witness the generosity of your peers and leaders who have been so kind as to share what it is that they're learning in this truly extraordinary time. So heartfelt thanks to Neil, to Tricia, and to Lana on behalf of everyone here at Orchestras Canada and across the country. And thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to our next encounter in real life on Facebook. See you soon, everyone. Thanks so much.